Welcome to the Supplier Diversity and Inclusion Podcast by Fips Consulting. In this podcast, I speak with international guests who share their experience on supplier diversity and inclusion. Today, I get the pleasure to talk to Wolfgang Kowatsch, founder and CEO of myAbility. Wolfgang changed his career path more than 10 years ago. He was the GM of an Austrian job board and got in touch with Gregor Demblin, who wanted to change the business world to be more inclusive. Together, they founded what is now myAbility.jobs, the largest job board for people with disabilities in the German-speaking region. myAbility now also offers consultancy and training services to businesses and founded a business-to-business network for disability inclusion. Wolfgang is Chief Growth Officer and makes sure that myAbility enlarges its international impacts and partnerships. Wolfgang, it's such a pleasure to have you as my guest.
Thank you so much. Happy to be with you.
So maybe, Wolfgang, you can share real quick, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Vienna, Austria, where our company is based with 50 employees, half of them with a disability, and we're trying to commit as many companies as possible to follow our journey in the mainly German-speaking area.
Very good. Since myAbility is covering Germany, Austria, Switzerland, so maybe you can give some more insights of who myAbility is besides all the information I just shared in the intro.
Yeah, great. Thank you for inviting me and having the opportunity to talk a little about our work and our common views that are so important these days. I want to start with myAbility's mission. We call it together with the business world for fair and accessible society, which means that there's two interesting elements of it. One is together, and the second is the business world. So we think that the business world has it in its hands to make a difference, to change things. Especially now, we are all aware of the fact that waiting for politics or decisions from politicians may not always be a good idea, right? I mean, sometimes it's important, and then very often it's important that there's progress, but waiting for it and not taking the responsibility maybe doesn't always work out. So we think that the big chance and big potential here is that the business world and big organizations and also small and medium-sized ones, they have it in their hands to progress there. And that's what we want to support. And the second word that I want us to take out of our mission is together. We also think that we should not be the guys to say you should do this or you have not done that. We always believe in the fact that it needs to work out together. So the first step is always for us to convince decision makers or the organizations that it makes sense for them also in an economic way. And then we talk about how we do it. And I think these two elements describe us very well. And then we also worked on a common vision and with clear targets up to, I think, beginning of 2028, we wanna reach 1 million people with our work directly, interactively, and we want to work with 1,000 long-term customers. So we have also the plan to most likely expand a bit the area we're working on, and we would love to make a bigger impact with that.
Very interesting. So I think it's a great point what you mentioned, that the business is kind of leading first and then the government follows. So we don't always have to wait for the government to set some policies around inclusion for businesses to then follow. If businesses start having these policies, then maybe the government will follow as well.
Absolutely.
You mentioned when you actually started myAbility, but what made you decide to start such an organization?
In so many cases, it's based on a very interesting personal story. Like, my plan was not when I left my University of Business Administration to become a social entrepreneur in the field of disability inclusion, but then something really interesting happened. Like when I was managing director of a small international job board in Vienna, Austria, I got a phone call, and on the other end of the phone was my now business partner, Gregor, and he was just saying thank you that he hired a person with disability through my platform. And then we started talking, and it turned out that Gregor was a wheelchair user himself. And yeah, one led to the other. So he was kind of explaining to me in a very strong way that there's many things that need to be changed, that the businesses have so much potential, that his own experience is a very strong basis for change, for this driving energy. And my background was more the business oriented managerial strategy and approach. So we put this together, and the outcome was some months later that we launched a job board for people with disabilities as part of my platform. And to shorten this up a little bit, many years later, we founded myAbility, which was exactly 10 years ago, where we not only offered the chance to hire people with disabilities through a platform, but then also tried to find answers to other questions, such as, can I measure what I'm doing in that field? What preparation and after work do I need after the recruiting process? How can I build up awareness for my leadership team? How can I connect with other companies and all this? So we kind of started talking internationally, and we took some interesting pieces and started with myAbility. The result is 10 years later that we have grown quite a lot, and we are still very motivated, because I think there's a lot of work to do still.
Totally agree here. You mentioned you want to touch 1 million people. Maybe you can give some more details. Is that the people with disabilities you want to touch, 1 million?
Thank you for checking on that. It's a combination of both. This is also a bit a specific way of working that we have. On the one hand, of course, it's how we can reach as many people with disabilities through our work with our career platform. We want to give better chances to people with disabilities so that they can succeed at work and they succeed with their career. There's this job board that I mentioned. There's also a talent program where you can be part of for free. And this is like the main part. Let's say in terms of quantity, it's maybe 80 to 90%. But then the rest of the pie is guys who decide important things in companies, which is participants of our trainings, which is members of our business network, which is participants of our consultancy projects and all of this. We think, and this is maybe also the explanation why it's a mixture, we think it's so important for both sides. We should not only focus on the business and on theory and on only consultancy logics, but we should also include in our work the people who should profit from all this. And that's why it's both. And we calculated thoroughly and came up with this big number, because there's many people who can profit from it, but on the other hand, maybe even more people in companies that should know more about it to create these chances that are needed.
Thank you for giving some more details on that, and that's very impressive. I mean, 1 million people throughout the DACH region is a lot of people. But if we look at the statistics from how many people actually live with a disability, visible or invisible, it's around 10%, right?
I would even say maybe a bit more. This has also been a challenge for the people that are concerned with that. Some statistics say, such as in Austria, also Statistik Austria, which is the official statistics board, they come up with numbers close to 20%. But then there's also the older generation and maybe other aspects in life that are included. When you break it down to the job world, the business world, we always speak of 15%, which is every seventh person that is concerned. And it is a lot on a very relevant group of people, and it deserves more attention than it gets.
Totally. And maybe just for understanding or clarification, what do you actually see or what do you include? Is there like a guide that you use to define a disability at your organization?
I mean, you can get lost with looking for the best definition. You're completely right. Even in my little tiny country, and if you compare it with Germany, you come up with even different definitions. So it's important to know all this and to be able to answer these questions to the companies that are also a bit confused sometimes. Our basis and common ground is the UN definition. Like according to the United Nations, a person that cannot participate fully in work or leisure activities for more than 6 months. And then it depends a bit what exactly it is. But we see it in a broad way, but according to that definition. And then in our country, we have the passport for disabled people that have this status at work, who much less. Then there's another definition from the work institution. I'm S in Austria that define it a bit differently, etc., etc. So then you need to have a closer look. But the United Nations is the best way to look at it. We think.
Perfect. I put the link to that definition into the podcast information so people can look at it and see what is included there. So I can imagine that even though you have this great organization and really doing good for society, you probably also face lots of challenges. Can you share kind of what challenges you face and maybe how you overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, where should I start? Let's maybe say the first element I would come up with is for us, but it's also a lot of energy that comes out of there, which is the combination. And I mentioned it at the beginning, the combination of making business, covering costs, maybe even make small profits to be able to reinvest in our thing and to create a huge impact. And this is not always the same direction of attention and prioritization. For me, it is a source of energy, to be honest, because I love my job and what I'm doing, and I hope also many of my company too, because of that, that we can be successful, feel productive, can reach our goals, can grow, can hire people, can give jobs to more people. But at the same time, the even more important factor, and maybe the top of the pie, is the impact we create. Now, how many jobs can we create or improve through our talent platform, our talent program, or job platform, or how many leaders can we convince that this is an important issue, and how much have companies learned thanks to us and all this. So this combination is a huge challenge because there's sometimes diverging interests, right? But I see it even more as a source of energy. The second maybe challenge right now is also the when you call it scaling. What is the scaling potential of inclusion and accessibility? I think it's not a contradiction, but sometimes it's not the easiest way to scale, right? Because normally nowadays, when you say you're a startup or a scale up, you try to find a digital product that you can create a lot of output from with less input that you need to give. In our case, it's of course a positive way to build up the business, but we also need to pay a lot of attention to convince companies that the topic is important, to be ourselves as inclusive as possible and walk the talk. So it's like this kind of also energetic, but sometimes challenging thing that we would love to shortcut sometimes our expansion and our growth. And that's me who is mainly responsible for that. And at the same time, we sometimes need to sit down and think, okay, why do we do this really? And does it matter if the profit is 2% more or less? Isn't it much more important to create chances and to give better lives to many people? So it's a bit abstract, but I think it's kind of understandable what I'm saying. And still, I strongly believe that if we take one step after the other, we can play a great role also in the future and in other countries too. And maybe the last part, and this is a bit the most current one, no? When you switch on the TV, some of them switch off the TV very quickly because when we think about diversity, disability, equity, inclusion, all this, there is, 3 years ago, it was seen differently, let's say in the mainstream media and in some regions. This is something we think about a lot. What does this mean for our aspirations and our plans? And it's maybe still a bit too early to answer that, but I'm still very positive for various reasons, because first, we are a region where there's a strong commitment, much stronger than maybe years ago, towards disability inclusion and accessibility. You don't even need to look at the legislation. You can also look at diversity strategies of companies. You can look at statements of C-level people. So this has improved a lot from our point of view in terms of openness and motivation. And I think this will not go only because some people say diversity is not good, right? And also because if you talk about dimensions of the diversity spectrum, I think our plans and our thoughts and our concepts are maybe less used as in an ideological way or political way. And this is then at the same time also a chance, no, that I've been in a jury of the diversity award in my country, and I was also a member of the jury some years ago, and I've seen that nowadays the percentage of projects handing in great ideas and proposals in the context of disability inclusion, that accessibility has risen a lot. So you can say the whole thing is a bit under pressure. We will see where we go. Hopefully in Europe, we maintain course. I'm very optimistic. We're here to stay because we're 15% of the population. You lack of talent. You need to report that. You can prove your progress and have successful business out of that. So this is also I would call it challenge, but at the same time, as always, we try to see it as an opportunity as well.
Yeah, we're in very disruptive times. I have these conversations on a daily basis, but I think, as you're saying, I mean, people with disabilities, 10 to 15% of the population, you cannot just ignore that group. There were reasons and there are reasons why companies are having diversity and inclusion programs internally, but also in the supply chain. So it's not just going away. All of these advantages of having, for example, diverse teams or having people with a disability in the workforce or helping to develop products and just to make sure that accessibility is there for everyone, right?
There's different angles to see that, and I completely agree. What I think is it has been so valuable that in the last, let's say, 10 years, there have been so many activities. Now, let's mention Valuable 500 as a great example, no? That what they have done with many corporations and the energy they have put in all this on a global, international level was great. Then the ILO, who has also done a lot of good work to measure inclusion with their self-assessment tool and bring together networks from all over the world, or Susan Scott Parker, or whoever you want to mention here. I think this has helped a lot to reach that level where we now and where we're not so easily to replace. When you compare it, I can talk about my initial time, no, like almost 15 years ago when I talked about disability, it was reduced to an individual case of a person in a wheelchair, and at the end it didn't work. This you don't hear so often anymore when you talk with managers. They talk about inclusion in a different way. So there has been, fortunately, a lot of progress, so that it's more present and more relevant, and that the structure has improved a lot for that. So I'm happy about it.
Something that it's my daily statement. We just keep on doing in what we believe in. We stay positive.
The argument of the last resort, exactly.
So you mentioned you're covering Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. So people with a disability, how can they engage with you?
Yes, it's in different ways. Like where the doors are open the most is our networks. We have 2 networks running. We also have initiatives in Germany, but more on an event basis. But in Switzerland and Austria, we're running the national disability networks for business. And there it's very easy to engage with us because we do like maybe, let's say, 10 events a year altogether. And it's very easy to register for a webinar on inclusive employer branding, which will happen in a couple of weeks or in May, or pass by in Vienna or in Zurich to join the Disability Confidence Day that we do once a year, or 2 other discussion formats with companies. So that's what we try to do, to be invitive, to lower the bar to participate in conversation. And at the end, of course, there's also the membership that you can gain for very little investment, and then it's hopefully for longer, no? That you stay with us over time, and then you really profit out of that. Also because you want to learn from others what has worked and what not, and then not to start from zero all the time. So this is the first way to engage. And there's of course others also, like it's a bit specific, but we are presenting in all the conferences and talks about disability inclusion in our area, have great cooperations with other organizations, and also proactively, especially with the job board. No, you can understand it as a business. Like we call 10 companies. Have you ever thought about hiring people with disabilities? Can you imagine it's a big advantage? And then you start talking, and out of 10 companies, maybe you start working with 1 or 2. And this you need to do efficiently and over a long period of time. And now we have, I think last year, we had 500 companies working with us, and half of them in Germany and the rest in Austria and Switzerland. This is hard work, but I think this is important. No, you should have different options to engage and not only one, because every company is in a different moment or situation, and it should be adequate to that.
Right. Thank you. So that's the engagement for companies, right? So, but how can actually people with a disability connect with you? Can they sign up to your job board or also through the networks? Is that the best way?
There we have two very specific offerings. What we do not do so much is coachings, because there's great offerings from public providers or other organizations that focus on that. What we do is we try to find you in the internet. We have very optimized Google advertisements or search engine optimization procedures in the back, and also, of course, newsletters or other ways to get engaged, like with partner platforms where you can click and then you end up with a job offering and stuff like that. So this is one important stream and then channel that should still grow a lot. And the other is the talent program. And it's more about social media. We try to run social media campaigns and invite young or maybe a bit more experienced people with disabilities who want to make a step forward in their career planning and then get in direct touch with selected companies. That's more on a focused way of doing it. And then there is an interview if you qualify for it, and there's some coaching also involved in there, and then it starts with a matching event. So these two ways, and the 1 million consists in a big way of exactly that.
Thank you for giving that insight. It's all about network, right? And getting the people together and getting them also to know that there is an organization like myAbility who offers these programs. We met at the Disability Confidence Day in Zurich last year, so where we also had some great stories from people with disabilities who actually participated in your program, who were working with corporates, who then shared their experience.
Was great meeting with Google, no? Yeah.
Yes. And great. I think we had examples from IKEA and Novartis, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Also, and then Johnson & Johnson was there and talked about it, and Takeda, another pharmaceutical company. So yeah, stories exist, and we just wanted to give it a stage so that others, either people with disabilities, get motivated and improve their chances, but also companies mostly, that they say, okay, when these 2 or 3 companies that are leading in the sector commit there, we should do it as well. It should be a bit the snowball effect, even if there was not much snow this year.
Right. So as you know, I'm actually focusing on supplier diversity and inclusion, so really inclusive supply chains. I'm collaborating now with Disability In, which is a US organization also including people with disabilities in the workplace, but also especially now what I'm doing in Europe, helping them grow their network and visibility of people with a disability who run their own business. Do you have any programs around that? Do you include people with a disability who run their own business to connect them with corporates?
Like not that specific, but like it's a super important and relevant topic and part of the whole thing that we're working on. Let's talk maybe about our own experience as a customer or as a provider of services. And then what we've seen there is that whenever we need products for our own company, there's 2 things. First, is there people with disabilities involved? Ideally, not necessarily, but ideally also run by people with disability, or is their services accessible enough, or is the topic accessibility being thought enough and given much relevance? And of course, we cannot say that companies should get as accessible as possible and then do not work on it ourselves. And with the supply chain, it's not easy always. But just to give you an example, we have been successfully working with our software partner Jobico, who is programming or who supports companies in running job boards with their software. And there were quite some intense, long talks about the minimum status of accessibility on the platform, because our partner is a mainstream provider, and not all the customers have asked for that. And there is suddenly couple of them, maybe only us or a few of them, who really need big changes in their structures. So it's understandable that they cannot switch completely. And this is crucial for us to go into these discussions and to demand that a certain level is reached. And that's what we still work on. It's not done when you once deliver it. Years ago, you need to work on it constantly, and also for the future, because there's a new frameworks, there's new elements on the websites, all of this, and it's a constant talk. And ideally, your partner then also profits from that because he or she can also frame it in new customer pitches or in public. No, that this topic is important. So if you do it the right way, both parties profit a lot. There's also other examples like our HR software or we have a booking software for our desks and all this. And by default, unfortunately, not many are accessible enough. So it's always up to us to say, okay, this is not an option for us. Even maybe it's the cheapest one or the easiest one. We need to go the other way where someone is ready to negotiate that topic. And maybe so in real life, it's very present and very relevant, even if we do not have like a market solution of bringing together companies with people. Or so we are not running a marketplace, but it's more and more important. And maybe just another aspect is also that very specific topic of workshops for people with disabilities. Now, sometimes companies are mixed up a bit with, we are inclusive because we buy some products from shelters where people with disabilities work. And then at the end of the day, it's not being analyzed if the conditions where people with disabilities work are adequate or inclusive, right? So we are always a bit skeptical with the conclusion of some of our organizations saying, no, we don't need to work with you because we do our projects anyway, and that's what we define as being inclusive. We do not agree with that. And even worse when it's shelters that do not comply with the standards that they should. There's a lot of discussion here in Austria, also in Germany, and I guess also in Switzerland, about that there should be more budget and more resources to pay all these people adequately, and then you come up with interesting projects. But when both things do not work, the inclusion definition and the conditions there, then we are not very positive on that kind of supply chain.
That's an interesting aspect, especially on the shelter workshops, where you actually expect that there is fair conditions, right? But yeah, interesting point. And I think we need to make sure that whenever we include shelter workshops in the supply chains or whatever kind of suppliers, that they comply to a certain standards in regards to equality, diversity, and inclusion. You brought up also a very interesting point in regards to software that you buy or need and how many of them are actually not accessible for everyone. I think that's something that you're really good at, and we try to bring this forward, really creating awareness of what are the different aspects of disabilities and what we need to look for in products and services to make it accessible for everyone.
Absolutely. Just today, I was at an interesting workshop. It was, I think, Capgemini talking about digital accessibility, right? I just wanted to bring this in. And there was a very interesting presentation about the new European framework on how to comply with the new laws and all this. So I'm really curious how this will work out, because we haven't had this in our history, that there will be really severe penalization in case of non-compliance. Let's see how the real life then works out for these companies who completely ignore it. But what I found most interesting was the result of the presenter, that at the moment only 4% of the websites out there are fully, whatever fully means, but enough accessible, right? And then this was interesting. No, that's what you're saying, that at least like 15% or 20% of our society has a disability, and we cannot even reach that level, not talking about 100 in that way. So it was really interesting for me, and then that means at the same time that there's a lot to work on within a very short time, because in June the law will be active, at least in the European Union, and there's no other way to ignore this completely. And this is very interesting times ahead of us. Yeah.
Totally. And to be honest, my website is not accessible for everyone. So I'm really working and pushing for my new website, because I need to walk the talk, right? I cannot ask for...
Even if you're a smaller organization, but you cannot afford, right? Absolutely. Yes. Same here. Yeah. Fully agree. Yeah.
So very, very interesting. I think, Wolfgang, we could go on for hours, but we're already at the end. But I would leave you with sharing one last thought or tip.
Like what now has captured a lot of attention from my side is the future importance of leadership and data in disability inclusion. So my call to action is, let's get as many leaders involved as possible and explain disability inclusion in a constructive, pragmatic way, and this will pay off. So the focus should be the leadership commitment, and then base it on data and numbers so that it stays there and it's not connected only with engaged people that when they leave the company or when they retire, they take the whole thing with them. So I think these two angles are really important, leadership and data. And I want to motivate every company that is confronted with some questions in that field to have a look at that.
Thank you so much, Wolfgang. It was very great conversation, interesting insights from you, and I'm really much looking forward to collaborating with you and bringing disability and inclusion to more visibility in, especially in the DACH region, but also that people with disabilities connect with myAbility or also connect with Disability In if they have their own business and sign up.
Thank you.
Now, if you want to make your supply chain more inclusive, reach out via fipsconsulting.com or Fips Consulting on LinkedIn. Listen to my next episodes where I talk to more experts about supplier diversity and inclusion and the impact it has on their company. Reach out if you have any inputs or topics around inclusive sourcing, responsible sourcing, supplier diversity and inclusion you want me to talk about. Thanks much for listening. Bye. Responsible.